The phone was on speaker. Marcus had insisted on it, wanting everyone to hear about his brilliant real estate negotiation. Instead, 23 family members heard Executive Director Patricia Chen's calm, professional voice deliver the words that stopped champagne mid-pour. "I'm reviewing the deed history," Patricia continued. "The property at 847 Coral Drive has been solely owned by Stephanie Chen since 2019. Marcus Chen appears nowhere in the chain of title. We're legally obligated to report this to law enforcement." Marcus's face went from celebration flush to chalk white in the span of a heartbeat. Mom's champagne glass hit the tablecloth, spreading gold liquid across the white linen like a stain that wouldn't come out. Dad's jaw tightened in that specific way that meant he was trying very hard not to process something. I sat there, fork still in hand, watching my entire family recalibrate reality in real time. "There must be some mistake," Marcus said, voice cracking on mistake. His hand reached for his phone, already pulling up documents he thought would save him. "Stephanie's been struggling. She needed help. The villa was just sitting there empty." "The villa," I said quietly, setting down my fork with deliberate care, "has 16 long-term tenants across 4 units. It generates $48,000 annually after expenses. And it's never been empty." Aunt Linda's fork clattered. Uncle James stopped mid-chew. My cousin Sarah, Marcus's biggest cheerleader, stared at me like I'd started speaking Mandarin. "You told us she was barely making rent," Mom said, her voice small and confused. "You said the property was underwater, that she'd lost her job, that selling it was the only way to help her." "I've been directing operations at Chen Medical Supply for 6 years," I said. "My salary is $92,000. The villa was my inheritance from Grandma Lynn. I've spent 5 years converting it into sustainable housing. Every tenant pays 20% below market rate. 3 are graduate students. 2 are teachers. 1 is a nurse at County General." The math was happening across multiple faces simultaneously. I could see Uncle James doing calculations on his napkin. Aunt Linda had her phone out, probably pulling up property records. Cousin David, the accountant, had gone very still in that way accountants do when they spot fraud. "How much did you tell them it was worth?" I asked Marcus directly. His silence was its own answer. "The buyers offered $2.3 million, Dad said slowly, like he was testing each word for truth. "Marcus said you'd agreed to the sale. That you were splitting the proceeds 60-40. That you needed the money for medical debt." "I have no medical debt," I said. "I have excellent insurance through Chen Medical. I have $73,000 in savings. I own the villa outright, no mortgage. And I've never spoken to Marcus about selling anything." The table had that specific quality of silence that happens when everyone is talking at once inside their own heads. Forks frozen. Glasses suspended. The ocean breeze through the open patio doors was the only sound, carrying the salt smell of low tide and the distant cry of seagulls. Patricia Chen's voice came through the phone speaker again, professional and devastating. "I'm legally required to report this. The buyer's earnest money, $230,000, is being held by our firm. Mr. Marcus Chen signed documents claiming to have power of attorney. He provided falsified medical records stating Ms. Stephanie Chen was incapacitated. We've contacted the California Bar Association's fraud division." Marcus's phone slipped from his hand onto the table. The screen showed a document. My signature, expertly forged on a power of attorney form dated 3 months ago. The medical records beneath it claimed I had early onset dementia. I was 34 years old. The doctor's name was someone who didn't exist. "Marcus," Mom whispered. But it wasn't a question. It was the sound of understanding arriving too late. I pulled out my own phone. Opened my folder labeled Property Management. Turned the screen toward the table. "This is the villa's operating account," I said. Scrolled slowly. 16 rent deposits. Every month. For 5 years. Maintenance records. Tax payments. Difference. Here's last month's property management report. Here's the inspection certification from the city. Here's the email chain with my tenants about the community garden project. I looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. My brother, who I'd lent $7,000 3 years ago for his emergency. Who'd asked to crash at the villa for a few days, and I'd said no because I had tenants whose homes I protected. Who'd called me selfish when I wouldn't co-sign his business loan. "You told them I was struggling," I said. Not a question. A statement of fact. You needed them to believe I was desperate. Because desperate people sell property for less than it's worth. And families help desperate people. Even if it means stealing $2.3 million. It wasn't stealing, Marcus said, but his voice had no conviction. It was going to be an investment. The startup was going to succeed. I was going to pay you back. With what? Uncle James's voice cut through. He'd stopped being polite. The napkin in front of him showed calculations. Even if your startup succeeded, you'd already spent the earnest money. $230,000. Gone. On what? Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. The Porsche in the driveway answered. The Rolex on his wrist answered. The receipts Aunt Linda was now pulling up on her phone. Marcus's social media the past 3 months answered. Pubo. Nobu. First-class flights. Crypto investments he'd bragged about. The earnest money was already spent. How many people did you lie to? I asked. The silence stretched. Mom and Dad obviously, I continued. Who else? Aunt Linda? Uncle James. I looked around the table. Show of hands. Who gave Marcus money because he said I was struggling? Aunt Linda raised her hand slowly. $5,000. For your medical bills. Uncle James, $8,000. For villa repairs he said you couldn't afford. Cousin David, $3,000. For property taxes. Grandpa Chen, who'd been silent this entire time, raised his hand. His voice was quiet, laced with disappointment that hit harder than anger. $15,000. He said you were losing the villa to foreclosure. That you were too proud to ask for help. $31,000. From family. In my name. For problems that didn't exist. I watched Marcus's face as the total accumulated. Watched him realize that the lie wasn't just about the villa. It was about me. About taking my reputation, careful, responsible, proud Stephanie, and weaponizing it. Making family believe I was failing so spectacularly that stealing from me felt like rescue. The ghost ledger, I said quietly, pulling up a document on my phone. That's what my therapist calls it. The emotional accounting that doesn't show up on balance sheets. I turned the screen toward the table. The spreadsheet was titled exactly that, the ghost ledger. Line item 1. Every family dinner for 3 years where I felt guilty about success. Where I downplayed promotions because Marcus said I was rubbing it in. Cost. My right to celebrate achievements. Never recoverable. Line item 2. The villa renovation I completed alone. No family help requested because Marcus said I was showing off my inheritance. Cost. Shared family project memories we could have built together. Never recoverable. Line item 3. Every time I hesitated to mention tenant success stories because Marcus said I was being a landlord, not family. Cost. Pride in creating affordable housing, connection with extended family. Never recoverable. Line item 4. The guilt about saying no when he asked to stay at the villa. The guilt about saying no to co-signing. The guilt about having boundaries. Cost. Self-respect. 3 years of apologizing for existing successfully. Never recoverable. Mom was crying silently. Dad's hand had moved to cover hers, but his eyes stayed fixed on Marcus. You made me small, I said. Not just to steal from me, but because my success made your failures visible. So you convinced everyone I was failing too. Convinced them so thoroughly that stealing $2.3 million felt like family helping family. Patricia Chen's voice returned. Miss Chen, I have the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office on the line. They'd like to speak with you about pressing charges. This constitutes wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse given the falsified medical records. The FBI may also have jurisdiction due to the interstate wire transfers for the earnest money. Marcus stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the patio stone, harsh and final. This is insane. I'm your brother. You'd really destroy the family over a misunderstanding. You forged my signature, I said. Each word clear and separate. You created fake medical records saying I had dementia. You collected $31,000 from our family using my name. You tried to sell my property, my tenants' homes, to fund a lifestyle you couldn't afford. You spent the buyer's earnest money before the sale closed. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is systematic fraud. Grandpa Chen stood. At 83 he still carried the authority of the family patriarch. "Marcus, sit down." Marcus sat. "Stephanie," Grandpa said, turning to me, "what do you need?" The question was simple. The answer wasn't. What I needed was 3 years back. What I needed was family dinners where I didn't feel guilty. What I needed was a brother who celebrated my success instead of weaponizing it. What I needed was to not be sitting at a family dinner talking about pressing criminal charges. But I couldn't have any of that. "I need the title company to unwind the sale," I said. "I need Marcus to face legal consequences for fraud. I need everyone who gave him money in my name to file reports with the district attorney. And I need all of you to understand something." I stood, gathering my phone, my purse, the folder of property documents I'd brought just in case. I bought the villa with my inheritance because Grandma Lynn believed in me. I converted it into affordable housing because I believe housing is a right, not just an investment. I work 60-hour weeks at Chen Medical because I believe in the family business. I have boundaries because I believe in protecting what I build. Marcus didn't just try to steal property. He tried to steal my reputation, my relationships, my right to exist successfully in this family without apology. And you all believed him because somewhere along the way, you decided that responsible Stephanie should help struggling Marcus, even if it meant Stephanie couldn't possibly be struggling herself. The silence was different now. Heavier. Aunt Linda was crying. Uncle James had his head in his hands. Mom looked broken. "The district attorney will contact each of you," I said to Patricia through the phone. "I'm pressing charges. All of them." "Understood," Patricia said. "I'll coordinate with law enforcement. Ms. Chen, for what it's worth, your due diligence on this property is impeccable. The documentation you maintained is what allowed us to catch this." I ended the call. Looked at my family one more time. Marcus had his head down, hands in his hair. Dad's jaw was still tight, that meant he was barely holding it together. Mom reached for me, one hand extended across the table, pleading. I picked up my purse. "Stephanie, please," Mom started. "I'll be at the villa," I said. "The community garden project opens next month. 16 tenants and their families. Real people with real homes that Marcus was willing to destroy for a Porsche and a dream." I walked out. The ocean breeze hit my face. Salt and freedom and the sound of waves that had been there long before this dinner and would be there long after. Behind me I heard raised voices. Marcus shouting. Dad's rare anger finally breaking through. Grandpa's quiet devastation demanding answers. 3 months later, I'm writing this from the villa's rooftop garden. The community space we built opened last week. 12 families showed up with plants, food, children, laughter. Mrs. Rodriguez brought her famous tamales. The graduate students installed a little free library. The nurse from County General taught everyone about medicinal herbs. Marcus took a plea deal. 18 months federal prison, 5 years probation, restitution of $230,000. The buyer's earnest money was returned. They understood they'd been victims too. The extended family paid back the $31,000. Not because I asked, but because Grandpa Chen requested it. Some relationships are rebuilding slowly. Aunt Linda helps with tenant events now. Uncle James sent his accounting firm to review my property management systems. Said he wanted to learn. Mom and Dad are in therapy. We're not there yet. Maybe we won't be. But I'm no longer carrying their guilt about my success. Marcus's Porsche was seized. His Instagram is deleted. His startup never launched. I have Sunday dinners with Grandpa Chen now. Just the two of us, usually here at the villa. He sits in the rooftop garden and tells me about Grandma Lynn's dreams for this place. How she'd wanted it to be something that mattered. You did what she hoped, he told me last week. You built something that serves. Not just profits. I think about Marcus sometimes. About the brother I thought I had versus the one who existed. About how desperation reveals character and privilege reveals it even more. The villa isn't just property. It's 16 families who have stable housing. It's graduate students who can afford to finish their degrees. It's teachers who aren't spending 70% of their income on rent. It's a nurse who can save lives without worrying about her own housing security. Marcus saw $2.3 million. I see home. The difference between us was never about money. It was about what we thought property was for. He thought it was for taking. I know it's for building. The community garden has tomatoes now. Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson picks them every Tuesday. The little free library has 147 books. The medicinal herb garden is thriving. Me. I'm having dinner with Grandpa tonight. Just the two of us watching the sunset over the ocean, surrounded by the sound of families living their lives. They wanted to take something from me. Glad they proved its worth. The account is balanced. Not in their favor. In mine.